Okay, well, good morning, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us today for our special talk. And I'll just take a moment here, quickly introduce myself and then our guest speaker. So my name is Amy Jewett, and I am the Pennsylvania IMAP Invasives Program Coordinator with the Western Pennsylvania Conservancy and the Pennsylvania Natural Heritage Program. I'm based in the Pittsburgh region, but today I'm joining you from my home office in Butler County. And today we have a special guest speaker, Larissa Cassano-Hamilton. She's going to be talking with us today about the management of European water chestnut. I want to mention really quick, we do have the option to ask questions through a Q&A feature in our webinar. So if you'd like to type in a question during the webinar, you can feel free to do that. And then at the end of the webinar, we will take some time to go through and answer any questions that come through. So I just want to take a moment really quick and introduce Larissa, and then we will go ahead and get started with our presentation. So Larissa is the Watershed Specialist with the Mercer County Conservation District. She graduated from Grove City College with a biology degree and a concentration in conservation. She went on to complete her master's degree at Slippery Rock University in Parks and Resource Management. Larissa started at the Mercer County Conservation District as an environmental educator and still incorporates that into her watershed work. When the weather starts changing, all eyes are on waterways for aquatic invasive species. And today, Larissa will be sharing the district's experience with invasive European water chestnuts. So without further ado, I will hand things over to you, Larissa.
Thanks, Amy. Good morning, everybody. I'm happy to kind of share our experience with you today. First off, though, I do want to shout out to the Mercer County Conservation District staff. They jumped right in to help when we found this plant. They were a huge part of this success, especially Nick Travelli. So I really want to shout out the staff. Couldn't do that without them. It's definitely been a group effort. And if you're not sure where Mercer County is, we're all the way over by Ohio, and we're between Pittsburgh to the south and Erie to the north to kind of give you an idea of where we're at. As mentioned, I am the Watershed Specialist, and we can just jump right in. So I titled this Cute Flowers, Killer Seeds. You're going to hear about why. This is our story about managing European water chestnut. So kind of here, let's just start at the beginning, identification. Here's a nice drawing of what the plant looks like. You'll see plenty of examples of real life in just a few moments. Trapa natans, this is not the one that is used in our takeout dishes. You could technically eat it, but there's a nematode that lives inside, so I wouldn't risk it. It has these really cool looking floating rosettes that can be about the size of a saucer to about the size of a dinner plate is probably the biggest ones I've seen. The leaves are very unique. They're triangular shaped and toothed, as you can see in that picture there. And the roots are very substantial. They can be up to 15 feet long. And you'll see some pictures of that in a moment as well. It's a very robust plant. And as I mentioned, the flowers are cute. They're just little and white and a little bit of yellow as well. Very unassuming, and take a note of when they bloom. So mid to late July here in Pennsylvania, is really important for treatment. And the reason why this plant, another reason why this plant is such a big deal is because of the seeds, or sometimes called nutlets, have these spines on them, as you can see here in the picture. They actually have reverse barbs within that spine. And these are very, very sharp, and they can puncture through equipment. And they're also viable for over a decade. So you really want to nip this in the bud. Here's a little bit of background about this plant. It's not from here originally, surprise, surprise. It was brought over by some water gardeners in the 1800s, and they saw it in Massachusetts, and it really began to spread quickly. And it does so because it has such a high reproductive rate. It produces a lot of nuts, as you can see here. The fragments of the plant are viable too. So each little leaf has an area, it's kind of like a bladder, and it keeps it and helps it float. And that's a whole viable plant on its own. The fragments and the seeds can stick to things and get passed around. They actually create really dense mats, which you'll see in a moment or two as well. And that completely blocks out the sunlight of the whole entire water column and really, really affects the food web. I guess one positive is that frost does kill the rosettes, but then they sink and those nuts are viable on the bottom for years to come. So it's a good thing and a bad thing. This plant is harmful in its non-native habitat in many, many ways. Physically, as we mentioned, those seeds are brutal. They can puncture through your boots. They can also puncture through your light vest and things like that, your gear. Biologically, like as I mentioned, it blocks the sunlight, really wreaks havoc on the ecosystem down below, and also has an economic impact, which we'll touch on a little bit later. So this plant is currently found basically through New England, the mid-Atlantic states. Here in PA, I know dolphin, pike, and bucks have some pretty sizable infestations. And then it did pop up in Warren County from a New York infestation. So that kind of came down through their water system. And then obviously we have it here in Mercer. This plant likes any freshwater setting. That can be slow moving water, whether it's a small stream up to a bigger river, like shallow water and nutrient rich water. We are a very rural county and we have quite a bit of agriculture up here. So we've got quite a few pockets of that meet this criteria. So that's why we're really on the lookout. Just a side note there is a population in a backwater channel of the Allegheny River, which is kind of a unique spot for it. So you really just kind of have to keep your eyes open and look around for it. So we first came across this plant. Let me give you some backstory first. We manage 7 flood control dams as the county of Mercer, and it's safety concerns. So we're out on those dams monthly, if not weekly, when we have really hard storms. And this was just a general day out at one of our dams. They were checking for beavers. We do have beavers that move in and kind of do their own construction and change some things around. And Nick, as I mentioned at the beginning of this webinar today, was out there trying to check the beavers and see what they were up to. And he came across this plant that just made a giant green blanket. And that was kind of a tip off for him. He has some history with invasive plants. He had a lot of background in that. So to see a complete monoculture on a pond kind of raised some flags for him. So he was able to grab a sample. He thought ahead. And we sent that sample to my counterpart up at Crawford County. So Brian has over 20 years of experience. He's seen a bunch of plants come through different waterways up in Crawford County. So we wanted to have a positive ID. We thought it was water chestnut. We were hoping, fingers crossed, that it wasn't, but he did help us ID it for sure. And then we just started on a whirlwind of research to learn about this plant. And you can see it is helpful to have a roller in the picture. We always kind of recommend doing that just so you can actually see the size of the specimen. Sometimes it's hard if you don't have something to judge the size off of, you're not sure what you're looking at. So that was really helpful that we did that. And it's nice to have it on a lighter background. So this plant has shriveled up quite a bit. They do desiccate very quickly, which is one way that we can help fight it. So as I mentioned, this kind of set us into a whirlwind of figuring out how to manage this site. I just jumped right into research. I had to learn all about the habitat, the biology, the life cycle, the threats, how to control it mainly. And it was really nice to have a whole web of people to do that with. So I reached out to conservation districts and watershed specialists, basically all across the state. They were super helpful. So shout out to them too. You guys really helped us along the way. Different organizations too. We had WPC and Sea Grant in with us. We talked with DCNR and DEP just to kind of bring all of our heads together and kind of think how we can kind of get some things moving. It was recorded in IMAP invasives because this was a very unique incident. And I'll show you on a map how different it is. And we realized that once we read about the biology of this plant, this was going to be something we needed to manage for many years to come. So it wasn't just a one and done, it was going to be a while. We also too wanted to get out to the public because we didn't want this to spread anymore. So we were contacted by a local news station and we did a spot on the news, which was kind of funny, or not funny, but a different situation for us. But that was good to kind of get ahead of it and get the right information out there for people to stay safe, but also be on the lookout. Sea Grant was awesome. There's Sarah up there in that office, and she helped us kind of go through this early detection and rapid response protocol. If you catch things early, you can really put a dent in the infestation itself, which is great for the environment, but also for your wallet. And we tried to find the most viable option. Now I understand that that chart is really small. That's mainly just so you can see how we organize things. There's different levels. So across the top, we have like option 1, option 2 to option 4. Sometimes you can extend this, beyond that if you need to. And we wanted to try to compare different methods of control. So that's what the point of this chart is, kind of go through part by part. And it really helped us have everything on one page so we can really narrow it down and talk through with the stakeholders. So you do those, the chart based on finances, first of all, so where are your funds coming from, how are you doing that? People power, am I going to use staff? Do I need volunteers to do certain methods? And then availability, am I able to get the equipment I need? Am I able to get the chemicals I need? So those break down into a manual control method, a mechanical control method, biological, and chemical. So that's what those 4 columns are across that chart. But like I said, I just kind of had that in there so you can have a visual. That's how we separated it. And that's what worked for us. Oh, so here's media is helpful. We really tried to be informative about this plant and try to be relatable. So we kind of called out to people that like to recreate outside, those that like to fish, those that like to hunt, that this could puncture your gear. You don't really want to mess with this plant. We also talked to the public too for them to contact us if they do find this plant, because I'd much rather go out on a call that it turns out to be a lily pad, and I know about it versus someone found a whole pond of this stuff and didn't call us. So yeah, I'd much rather just go out and take a look and see. I think we had 1 or 2 people kind of call us on that, which was helpful. But we really kind of told all of our local partners about this as well that manage different lakes and ponds, so they were on the lookout too. And it kind of a joke too, even if you say it right, it still might be come out a little different. So they mentioned that these are state-owned flood control zones. That's okay. But yeah, we tried to get out to the public first. So we went with hand pulling first because it doesn't cost that much money. I just had to buy a couple rakes. I had staff, I had some interns, I had some partners available to help. So we thought, okay, that's the most bang for our buck. Let's try it out and see what we got. So when we show up on July 11th, this is what I'm looking at. This is like a 7-acre pond of just green. And it almost looks like moss or grass or I don't even know, but that's all water surface that you're seeing there. The picture on the right is more of a ground level area that you can see. So it sticks up even out off of the surface and it gets very, very dense. So you can see here's one of our partners in a kayak, and we were out there for the whole day and barely made a dent in that. You can see here, it just makes quite a line even, so you can pull it and it's almost like a conveyor belt. Like these roots are so entangled that you pull like one plant and you take a whole mat with you. I was in my kayak at one point too, and I went full speed and I hit that like a wall. It just completely stopped me. That's how dense we're talking. So we filled up boats. We were on kayak and we filled up other big boats like a John boat and took those boats to shore. So here's us taking our boats to shore. And here's some of our awesome volunteers. Check out, here's MCCD staff. And these plants need to be removed from the whole water system itself. So you can't just take them to the edge. That was something I learned from some of the other conservation districts. This needs to be taken far away from the water source. So these plants were put onto tarps, as you can see here, and the tarps were dragged. These weighed probably, I would say, a couple 100 pounds of plant material, because you have all the water, you have some muck involved, and just that plant material is very heavy. So there were times that we actually tied this to the back of the truck and took it up a slope and dumped it over the slope. So there's no possible way these plants could be dumped back into this water system. One good thing about this plant is it desiccates very quickly. So this is July. It was a super hot sunny day. These plants shriveled up pretty much by the time we left. Because if that wasn't the case, if I left these, right here along the side, along the edge in this marshy area, and they dried out a little bit, it could still be viable and repopulate the whole area. So taking these plants up and over a hill, putting them in the sun, perfect way to do that. And I should mention too that this is all county property. So that was a kind of a unique situation too. So the County Conservation District manages this county facility. So we were able to get some paperwork signed. We were allowed to be in there. We can use our equipment in there. So that helped us have a quicker response than if this was on maybe private land or a different setting. So that was to our benefit. Here's another option too. Certain lakes have a lot of success with an aquatic harvester. Well, I guess I should go back and say, we didn't make a dent. You can see, look at how much is behind us in the boat. We didn't make a dent, we needed another option. So aquatic harvester is successful for some individuals and certain species of plants. They are not feasible for our budget here at the Conservation District. To either purchase one or rent one. I feel like they were definitely over $100,000. I feel like I remember 6 digits. It was such an absurd number, didn't register for us. And it's time consuming. We'd have about 7 acres to work with. The water level does fluctuate quite a bit. So sometimes that water can be, 2 feet deep, sometimes it's 6 feet deep, but it is shallow, it is nutrient rich. And that if we did it on the shallow water, it's too heavy of equipment. So I would probably sink in that muck, and it would also stir up a lot too. And with this plant, any fragment creates a new plant. So this harvester would chop it all up, then we'd have way more plants than we started with. So that was off the table. And then I came across this, a biological control. And there are some bugs that eat this in its native habitat, but it's not great to order bugs that don't belong in the area. And the treatment would take a while because bugs are eating the plant. But think about the whole kind of domino effect of releasing a new bug into this on top of this invasive plant. So we don't know what the ecological impacts would have been. And they just need some more research on these species too. But there is like a leaf beetle that they had talked about in this paper that I found, a moth, then also a weevil. I had seen more success comments about an Italian weevil, which kind of made me laugh a little bit. But yeah, more research needs done with that. So that was off the table. And then chemicals. So we settled on an herbicide. That seemed to be kind of our best fit, quickest action, effective. And we had the funds and the people to kind of get those in place relatively quickly. We had to do a bunch of different quotes for aquatic pesticide applicators. So we have our contract with Aquatic Environment Consultants. We had to apply for a Chapter 93 aquatic herbicide permit. That's super important. You definitely need that if you're treating with any chemicals. And we did our first application in September of 2018. And you can see here is 1 gallon of reward and 1 gallon of clipper per acre. So those are the names of the chemicals we used. So here's what it looked like about 1 day after treatment. You can see the lines of actually kind of where the boat passed through, and you can see the vegetation is no longer green. So that was a pretty quick response, which is fantastic. So what we learned from that is that it did suppress the population, but we realized, remember how I mentioned earlier, the flowers happen mid to late July. So when the flowers happen, that gives plenty of times for the seeds to develop by September. So that was too late for a treatment. It did help knock down the leaves though. So we kind of figured that we would be able to maybe do a spring treatment and then a fall treatment if the population were to come back up. So kind of hit it before it flowers and then get any at the end if they flower. And we've also, as many treatments as we've done on this site, we have not witnessed any fish kills, which is really good, a really great sign and a testament to that we're doing things right. So that was a really nice, nice bonus not to have any negative effects on aquatic life. We have so many snapping turtles that call this area home, tons of amphibians. There are some fish that live in there as well. They don't seem to mind the water fluctuation. But yeah, everything stayed okay. So that kind of threw us into the next thing of where is this funding going to come from? I didn't have a whole watershed allotment set aside for invasive species. I just kind of would use what I have on other projects. I didn't have something set aside for a whole 7-acre impoundment. So we looked around and we knew that Palms was opening. And if you're not familiar, Palms is Pennsylvania Lake Management Society. So they offer different mini grants for invasive species projects and just different kind of lake projects. So highly recommend. We did submit for a fall treatment. You can see it's not a huge amount of money, but that did go pretty far. And they do request that you do match contribution with that. And if you can see there, we were actually able to match our first treatment for the grant amount for our first application. So that was really helpful to show, you know, we have this issue, we've taken care of it for 1 year, we do need some help, and they allowed us to use that as a match. And we needed to have our Chapter 93 0.38 in place before we could do that permit. So there's a lot of pieces for that. We just kind of got to go through and work it out. We were able to do our price quotes, and then we did fall into a contract. So it worked in our favor. So 2018 was the first year we treated. So when spring rolls around in 2019, we are out and we are ready to start tackling this. We actually started surveying in April. That year, I think we had a little bit more rainy days. It's been super nice this year, so I've been out kind of checking, but it's very weather dependent. This plant likes a lot of nice warm days and sunshine, like most plants. So we would just do weekly site visits starting in April. And we look at the impoundment itself, and we also look downstream because we have an outflow area, and a ton of plant species will come through that riser, or a ton of pieces will come through the riser and kind of get spit out on the other side. So we look at both to kind of see, you know, what's going on and get the full picture of the area. So here's what I'm talking about. So that is our riser. That is the piece of infrastructure that manages the water level and spits it out at the other side of that hill. So you're standing basically at the top of the dam. To the left of you is the impoundment, to the right of you would be downstream. You'll see that in another picture or two. So this picture is to show you how fast this plant pops up. So the picture on the left is May of 2019, that's the 10th. Picture on the bottom is the 21st. So in 11 days, you can see barely under the surface of the water, those plants are there. Very quick turnaround. So here is another week or two. This is June. We let them come up a little bit more so we can really treat them and hit the population hard. And we have to raise the water so we can get in there and treat. So we need to, because as I mentioned, that water can be pretty shallow, kind of mucky. We need to raise it up so we can get the boat in there to be able to treat. So we actually put a little structure on the front of this so we can raise the water level. The beavers got a new home, and we were able to treat within a day or two from this picture, I think this year. So yeah, a couple of days had passed. And our applicator is great. He's fantastic. He actually had to make a trailer extension in order to get his boat in the water. So because this is a dam, there's a very steep slope. It's an earthen dam. So he's on a 26% slope to try to get his boat in. The access points on the side where you saw us earlier when we were taking the plants out can be kind of mucky. You sink in there. There's a lot of other vegetation that grows up along the edge. So this is actually the most viable way to get into this water. So yeah, kudos to him, he rocks. And we did 2 different types. We did one on the top and one under the surface. And this time was 2 gallons of reward, and 2 gallons of Tribune per acre. So we opted up and changed our chemicals a little bit. We went to the maximum allowable under our permit because this population, this was our 2nd year treating, we really wanted to knock things down. So you can see his pathways of kind of driving through there and how different it can look every time we visit. So here's the downstream portion. We put this fence up to collect the nutlets or seeds, whatever you want to call them. And this is just part of what we've gotten out of there. Those seeds are so robust, and this fence really helped keeping things out of the stream systems further down. So again, our water has fluctuated. We dropped it down a little bit more. And you can even see on the side, some of that is mud, but some of that is seed material on the side there to the right. So this is 4 days after treatment, and we can actually see the surface of the water again. We still see some residual plants in there, but we're very happy with how that turned out. Here's 1 week after treatment. The water is actually pretty clear. Look how you can actually, open enough. You can actually see like some wave movement, if you will, some ripples on there. So that's a great sign. And you see that's only a couple of days apart. We treated on the 7th, just to walk you through our time frame and how quickly. So the 7th to the 11th and the 14th. So within a week, which is that's at the top. But just to show you that in real time, that's how that went. We do survey via kayak as well. It's easiest for us to get into some of the nooks and crannies of this area. As we mentioned, the water does fluctuate quite a bit. So if the water's up sometimes, I can get into areas I can't reach if the water's lower. That helps me get into these back corners. So back in here, you can see my cursor down kind of where that X marks the spot is, if you will, or that plus sign. That is where there's a lot of in and outs, little coves and things to check out. So when we did this kayak monitoring, we did find just 1 rosette. So that's a pretty good sign that we knew that we kicked down almost 100% of it. Found 1 rosette, and then these circle areas were vegetative mats, not of water chestnut, but of other species, some spatterdock. I can't remember what else was in them, but there were a ton of nuts connected to those floating vegetation mats. So that's why we noted those on our map. Here we are 3 months after treatment, and we realized we did not need a second application. So that helped us save money and kind of roll that over to the next year. Those are just some algae around the outside. That happens, in the summertime. We'll see those. So those aren't our concern, but we're happy that we don't see any more water chestnut for this year of 19. So check this out. This is one of the biggest concerns with this plant. This was taken in February. We had some decent weather, so we went out in the field, and you can see everything there that you see that is a dark color is a seed. And those are generally spent seeds, so they're not necessarily viable. I'm sure some of them still are. But you can see where the water level was all the way up to the right where that dark line ends. So this water is down quite a bit. And this is just the whole seed bank. It's amazing how many. just piles and piles of seeds all around. Crazy. So you have to be really careful when you're walking in them. I usually have my boots on and check my gear really thoroughly after I leave. And I've been pretty lucky. So that kind of just transitioned us into the next steps as well. And we needed an extension because we didn't do that second treatment. We didn't need that. We realized that the treatments don't affect the seeds. So that's something to think about. And as you can see, we're able to save 60% of the funds for the 2020 emergence. So that was super helpful. We did get our grant extended. And we had to revise our budget a little bit. You'll see on there. Oh, we wanted to create an access area because remember how we said this is a 28% slope to get into here. So we wanted to put down some gravel so the boat could park and the trailer could park and the truck can drive on and not worry about sinking. We liked the work that our aquatic environment consultants did. So we made sure to stay booked with them. So this is the area we were thinking about putting one of the launch areas. So this technically could be drivable, but it's very soft. So we're thinking of maybe putting the rock in here to make kind of a driveway to get in there. So we didn't have to do that 28% slope anymore. It's a little bit challenging. But we instead put it on this other side, which if you remember from the first couple pictures, this is that area where we were pulling out the water chestnut in the boats and in the tarps. So just to kind of give you a frame of reference. So we did put in a little layer of gravel there. Here, oh yeah, this is the proposed access area. So this is what it looks like from one of our maps that we created. Nick is awesome. He created this to help with our proposal. You can just see, like, look how steep it is. Here's the contours. Very steep, 28%, no joke. And I guess since I have this map up, just to show you, when I mentioned we had taken them out on the tarps, we actually took them up this hill. They were attached to the back of the truck and they were dumped over this hill here so they could just bake in the sun. So all of this is like overflow area for safety concerns and safety reasons. So I knew that it wouldn't, knock on wood, wouldn't be used anytime soon. So that's where all the plants went. They were taken right from the water up over this little hill and dumped in the sun. So this is a smaller impoundment, as we mentioned. It's a county impoundment. It can vary from, I'd say, about 5 acres to 7 acres based on water surface level. But it's our neighbors that we're super concerned about with this plant. So this is a concern because we are that little tiny green dot on this map, and we have Pymatuning not very far from us, which is shared with Ohio. That's a giant lake system. We also have Shenango River Reservoir, which has a ton of recreation, just like Pymatuning. That's with the Army Corps of Engineers. We also have Lake Wilhelm. That's a DCNR lake reservoir as well. Sandy Lake, I think, is now a private residence area that used to be a really fun place to go. And there's a little beach up there. It's actually a glacial lake. And we also have Lake Watonka, which is a residential lake. As a neighborhood, I guess I should say. So we have a ton of water bodies around us that a lot of people visit or a lot of people live there. And there was a hit or two. Lake Watonka had a hit. I had a phone call that they found a rosette. There is a dam in Stoneboro, which is pretty close to Sandy Lake area. And I was out there with an intern. She said, "Hey, what's this plant?" We pick it up. She found a water chestnut. There was not a seed attached, and when we went back for further investigation, we didn't see anything. So that was kind of a weird pop-up. But if this infestation were to spread to any of these local lakes, that would be a huge economic impact. That would strain a lot of different agencies for funding. because it would be a really, really big concern. It also impacts our recreation businesses as well. So you really can't be out there boating, and it would definitely affect people that like to be outside and go fishing and hiking and boating. I don't know so much about hiking, but if you're hunting and you're kind of duck hunting through marshy areas, something to be aware of. But I'm really glad that Nick made this, because you can see that those are not very far away at all. 4 miles. Nope, things can move really quick. This is a curve that many of you have probably seen before. I just wanted to include it in here. Doesn't hurt to see it again. It always helps to catch things early. So as we say, early detection, rapid response. Usually you don't detect things till it starts to make a population a little bit. The earlier you hit it, the less it costs as well. So that's something to keep in mind. And that's why we really try to talk about our experience, just because we want people to learn from our experience and, not necessarily start at the part we started at. We want to give you like a little step ahead. So this is a great one. I found this just on the internet, but there are a lot of different versions of it. And the earlier you prevent it, the better chance you have at eradication. At our stage, we are going to be managing this for a very long time, at least 10 years, if not more. If we hit it hard enough those first couple of years, we might be able to have kind of wiped out those seed banks. I mean, that's very, very optimistic of a statement, but I'd like to think we hit it hard enough that we've really suppressed the population, that we can go forward with hand pulling a couple plants per year rather than whole mats at one time. So I think I kind of mentioned some of this already. We do want to go forward with hand pulling events, annual monitoring starting in April. And then we just kind of continue monitoring all the way through the fall. As we mentioned, frost kills, so we don't need to go out in the winter time to check for this plant. We really want to educate the public. So that's something we've really tried to hit hard, is education and outreach. This plant has been listed as a Class A noxious weed. So we hope that will help us maybe obtain some funding in the future. And there's also a pilot PRISM program, Partnerships for Regional Invasive Species Management. And they're trying to pilot that here in the Northwest region. So we're hoping that this can be part of that program as well. It's just always kind of planning and looking for partners and looking for some funding to kind of help us with this project and for education, and then for also management of the site itself. And as they say, life hands you lemons, make some lemonade. So this really became a teaching moment for us. We've had many educational field days. Those lakes that I showed you that are within our radius, all of those partners and people that work and manage those lakes were invited to come to the impoundment and kind of check out the plant, hear our story, talk about management. We opened it up to them. And that was really helpful to talk with those partners and kind of give them a heads up. And we also did rapid response exercise. We did a couple of days where we would actually go through with agency partners and Sea Grant and talk about exactly what we did, and kind of you can follow in our footsteps. This also became a case study for Sea Grant, which is kind of neat that we worked well enough and partnered up enough to be a case study. This also went to the Pennsylvania Lake Management Society conference and was a presentation there, and a bunch of aquatic professionals are there. Watershed Specialists, different conservation staff will be there. So we're just really trying to get the word out. You'll also see a picture there of plant camp. So those are a bunch of high school teachers from around the state, basically. And that was just this past summer, summer of 2022. And we took them actually to the impoundment and did a whole program and kind of talked to them about our story as well. So we're just really trying to get the word out there. Going forward, here's what 2021 looks like. We're thankful to have a donation from the Peter A. Yeager Foundation, very helpful. We also did another PALMS grant. They've been a great advocate to help us. And we really, like I said, want to do education to get the word out there for everybody. So we did some signs here. This is with Shenango River Watchers. This is one about a bunch of different invasives in the area that we're trying to keep out an eye on. Nick wrote an article about his experience with water chestnut, so it's from his point of view, and still our management story, but he's on there as well. And this isn't such a great picture. This is to show you where we're posting signage. So this signage is actually the one that's behind me. And it is just a general, have you seen this plant? And it talks about the water chestnut, very key identifying factors about the triangle shaped leaves and the teeth marks on them, the rosette shape, very general information, and our office number to call us. There's also the invasive number on there as well, to contact our offices directly. So for this year, like I said, we'd really hit this hard with chemicals since 2018. We'd like to take a break from that. This year we intend to do a handful event. So if you are interested in seeing this in person, this plant, gear up and come on out with us. We're looking at Sunday, June 25th. And why Sunday is because I have awesome volunteers coming. They are the Master Watershed Stewards. They're a county or two north of us. They're a giant cooperative, it's 3 different counties, and they're going to come out and help us remove these plants. So we're really looking forward to that. We're really appreciative of everyone's help. And if you want some more information about that, please reach out to our office and we'll give you the details. That's all I have for you today. So I will take some questions. But yeah, thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Larissa. That was awesome. I really enjoyed learning more about it. I know I'm familiar with the story, but it was good to kind of refresh on some of the details and obviously all the hard work that you guys have done. So well done to you and others at the district.
Thank you.
So if anyone has questions, we have plenty of time to take those. So again, that Q&A feature is available if folks want to type in questions, and I will moderate that as they come in. So we do have one question. Is the impoundment open to the public?
That's a great question. So that's kind of tricky of an answer. We have a gate, so we don't want people to drive on the impoundment. As I mentioned, it is an earthen area, it's an earthen dam, so we don't want people to drive on it. That can cause a lot of destruction if people drive on it. And we've had people take their 4-wheelers all across it, cause like tens of thousands of dollars worth of damage from running it up. So it's not open to vehicles, but there are people that go in and fish. So yes and no. You're welcome to go in and walk around and fish, but we don't want people in there on vehicles especially. So good question, yeah.
Okay, and we have another question. This is related to Lake Wilhelm. Are you doing anything to control European frogbit at Wilhelm?
Great question. Yes, they do have some issues with frogbit there. I'm kind of kept in the loop sometimes up there, but that's mainly DCNR is covering that. That is their facility. I do help as needed. I have gone to hand pulling events. And help with education. And frog pit is on our sign that I showed in a couple slides ago. So that is one to note. I have not seen that pop up in our impoundment, but yes, I help occasionally if they need me.
Okay, and then another question, do you also help private landowners remove the plant if found on private property?
That is great. So I mainly do technical assistance, and I'm trying to think if I've helped with removal. I mainly guide people with what they can do. I haven't found any giant infestations of water chestnut specifically in a private impoundment or a private lake. And that's why we really try to get the information out there for people so they can identify it and call us in. But yeah, I would just be able to kind of steer them in the direction and show them I'm not sure if they'd be eligible for the same funding that I'm eligible for as a conservation district, probably not. But there are some private funding out there that they might be eligible for. But yeah, I can just help kind of guide them, give them the rapid response protocol and kind of maybe work through that with them. I haven't had that opportunity yet, but that's how I would handle that, kind of talk them through some options.
And Larissa, I had a question for you. So when you guys did the chemical treatment, did you see any impacts to other vegetation that was in the lake? What was the analysis there? Because obviously you're targeting the water chestnut, but was other things impacted as well?
That's a good question. Yes, but we had to kind of weigh the options there and weigh the pluses and minuses. So we really needed to get water chestnut, kicked down as much as we could. So yes, we did probably lose, I don't even know a percentage. We did lose some things along the edge there, but we've seen the populations rebound, especially of our native species. So we did have some spattered off in there. We had a couple of different kinds of cattails. I'm trying to think of the other aquatic vegetation, but not much aquatic vegetation was growing in there because it had all been shaded out from the water chestnut. So kind of we're starting from zero again. So it's been nice to be able to have that space to recognize if any other invasives pop in, and also to keep an eye on the natives that are reestablishing. So I'm sure we wiped out a couple native plants, but we had to in order to treat what we were going for. So it was a little bit of bycatch, if you will.
Right. Okay, so there was one more question that came through. Any thoughts on how the plant got to Pine Run in the first place?
Yeah, I would love to know. So because it's not really accessed by the public, no one puts a boat in there besides us now that we treat. We are envisioning that perhaps it came in on a bird. So these seeds, the nuts, those really thick spines can stick in feathers, can stick in fur. So we kind of hypothesized that could be a way that it came in, whether it came in on a bird or, those beavers that came to do construction. That's really all we can kind of think of, is that it was spread via animals, because we didn't have any gear in there and it really hasn't been found anywhere around our county. I think, like I said, Warren County had a hit, but theirs came down from New York. So we have no idea. That's our best guess.
Okay, very good. Another question came through from Randy. He's asking, did you notice an allelopathic impact from the water chestnut, and what is the native plant recovery there at present?
Yeah, that's a good question. Like I mentioned from one of the earlier questions, I'm sure we knocked down some of our native species, but that blanket of water chestnut basically suffocated anything anyhow. So the recovery has been going pretty well. I've seen some reestablishment of one that keeps sticking out of my head is like a spatter dock. We'll have those vegetative mats kind of come up every other year or so. It is very water level dependent what will grow that year. So some years when it's deeper, we'll see some new things pop up or establish a little bit better than when it's super shallow and mucky, and vice versa. But yeah, it seems to be doing okay. As mentioned, we didn't have any fish kills or amphibian deaths. So we were really excited, to see everything stayed in the water. So yeah, it's on the rebound.
And I don't believe that water chestnut is technically an allelopathic plant. I mean, just the shading is what kind of prohibited the growing of the other plants. Is that correct?
That's how I understand it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, are there any other questions? We still have a little bit of time left. I want to make sure we open that up and answer any other lingering thoughts that people might have. So we'll just give folks a little bit more time here.
Yeah, that's fine.
And if not, that is fine too. Larissa, I will include your contact information in the email that I'll send out here later today, along with the recording of today's presentation. So if folks have any questions, they can reach out to you or the district specifically and learn more about whatever they may want to know. So thank you so much for taking the time today. This was really interesting and informational. So appreciate your time and your expertise.
Oh, you're welcome. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you.